Hi, everybody. I'm Truex from Eastman's Woodlands and Wildlife Committee, and we've been being asked a lot about bears this fall. So I thought it was time we do an update on the bears. Well, once again, you live at Eastman, you're going to be exposed to bears, and yes, they're cute, but remember, they're wild animals. So again, you need to learn how to respect them and stay safe for both yourself and your family, and for the bears. Uh, Again, here's a video courtesy of Chris LaFave earlier this year. Mama bear and three cubs. Let's watch them. And once again, Mama Bear is probably teaching them some bad habits that she learned a couple years ago here at Eastman. Here's another a video courtesy of Vicky Lyon earlier this year. And it's going to show these cute little cubs scurrying up the tree. I don't know if that's Mama scurrying up the tree as well, but again, that's one of their favorite things to do. Okay, there are about almost 5,000 black bears in New Hampshire, and the bear population here has doubled over the past 30 years. New Hampshire Fish and Game attributes the increase in bear population to protection of the bears, really limitations on hunting the bears. The densities of bears across the state vary considerably, all the way from zero point 0.1 to 1 bear per square mile. The average is about a half a bear per square mile. It's obviously higher in the White Mountains, lower in the southeastern part of New Hampshire, and we're probably right in the middle. So we probably have about half a bear per square mile. And in Vermont, there's slightly more bears, probably almost 8,000 bears as of 2024. And that's nearly double their objective of 3,500 to 5,500 bears. In the United States, in North America, excluding Alaska, there are about 800,000 black bears. We only have black bears here at Eastman. We don't have brown bears or grizzly bears. And the black bears are usually shy and they tend to avoid confrontation with humans, but they are wild animals. Black bear attacks on humans are very uncommon, but they can occur. And so you need to keep your distance from the bears. And you need to know what to do if you encounter one or more bears. So are human bear interactions becoming more frequent here at Eastman? Well, they do fluctuate from year to year. In the fall, bears are out eating everything in sight to prepare for winter. And if there's no food out in the forest, they need to seek food where they know they can find it. And unfortunately, that's where humans live. So food sources like acorns do fluctuate from year to year. Back in 2022, both acorns and beechnuts, which are their two favorite foods in the fall, were both scant. So the bears were looking for food elsewhere. Also, there were more people living at Eastman year round, and that means more opportunities for bears to find food. And climate change has led to bears emerging earlier from their dens than usual, and sometimes that's before there's adequate food out in the forest. And so it's no surprise that we're seeing more and more human bear interactions here at Eastman. So again, why Eastman? Well, bears have a great sense of smell. They can smell food 1 to 2 miles away. Some people say they can smell up to 12 miles or more away. I don't think that's a logical thing. But they can smell even birdseed that's stored in your garage. More on that later on. And they also have a great memory, so they're going to return to any site where they found food in the past. And some Eastman residents and visitors in the past were feeding the bears. That probably contributed to it. Once again, bird feeders are great attractions for bears. So don't put your bird feeder out between April 1st and December 1st. In fact, those limits may even change depending on what climate change is doing in the current year. And pet food and dishes left outside also attract the bears. Trash receptacles that are not bear resistant are often left outside. And bears can also get into composting bins that are not bear proof. And once again, barbecue grills that have not been cleaned of grease may also attract the bears. So, what happened after 2022? Well, back in 2022, the bear encounters peaked at Eastman. And in the fall of 2023 and through 2024, we had far fewer bear encounters. So, what happened? Well, Eastman's board did pass some measures regarding feeding the bears and securing trash and grills, but perhaps more important was a cycle of nature. 2022 was what we call a bust year for both acorns and beechnuts. Again, the production of acorns and beechnuts is cyclical. And once in about every 8 to 12 years, you'll see a down year for both acorns and beechnuts. And so when there's a bust year, the bears are much more likely to come looking for food near humans. On the other hand, 2023 was a boom year, or what we call a mast year for acorns. So the bears' favorite food now was plentiful in the forest once again, so they had less need to come and forage near humans. But Eastman still issues frequent reminders about bringing your bird feeders in when the bears are active, not feeding the bears, and securing your trash and your grills. So what about 2025? Well, once again, in the fall of 2024, most of the bear sightings involved a mother bear and 3 cubs. In the spring of 2025, most of the bear sightings involved a mother and 3 cubs, and then only 2 cubs. Well, most likely what happened, those cubs are now yearlings, and it's quite likely that the male cub had gone off on his own, and the 2 female cubs were still staying with mom. That particular mother bear was likely around during that lean mast year of 2022. So she learned her bad behavior of finding food near Eastman homes, and she's now teaching her cubs that bad behavior. So it's a great reminder, don't feed the bears. But since September of 2025, bear sightings here at Eastman have been extremely rare. And that's most likely because we have lots of acorns out in the woods this fall. Anybody who's taking a hike on any of our hiking trails is often seeing a lot of acorns. So the bears can find plenty of food out there. They don't need to come to the homes at Eastman. So once again, there's mom and the 3 cubs a year ago in the spring, and then the bottom one was spring of 2025. So now you only see 2 cubs. They're much bigger, and they're probably yearlings, and probably the male yearling probably went off on his own. This is a map that we've been publishing now for a little over 2 years. Rick Karish started to produce this map. Bob Meyer has taken it over, and they publish this usually on about a weekly basis to show where the bear sightings have been. But they've recently stopped publishing it because the bear sightings have been so infrequent in September and October. So again, black bears, male black bears are bigger than females. Males can average up to about 250 pounds, but some could weigh as much as 500 pounds. The females are smaller. They may average about 150 pounds. And black bears average 4 to 16 feet in length and up to 2 to 3 feet tall. That shouldn't be 4 to 16 feet. That'd be 4 to 6 feet in length at the shoulder when they're on all fours. But they can be 4 to 6 feet tall when they're standing on their hind legs. In fact, some males, when they're standing, can be as tall as 7 feet. So they have very long, curved claws that are strong, and they use those claws to rip open logs to eat insects. The female, also known as a sow, may mate with multiple males. So in fact, the cubs may actually have different fathers. Mating usually takes place around June, but the eggs don't get implanted immediately. They only get implanted once the female has fattened up in the fall. And the female usually gives birth to 2 or 3 cubs in the den, and that's anywhere from late January to early March. So again, black bears are usually black, as the name implies, but not always. Most New Hampshire black bears are all black, but some may have little white markings on their chest. You can see some right there. Particularly as you move further west in the United States, some will have brown fur, and other colors have been blonde, chocolate, cinnamon, blue-gray, or even white. But remember, these are still black bears. They're not grizzly bears or brown bears. Well, the bear claws, again, they have very strong, curved, non-retractable claws. So they use these claws to climb trees. They also use them to dig insects out of fallen logs. And the claw marks usually show in their tracks in the snow. We'll show some pictures of that a little bit later. So again, how long do black bears live? Well, the average lifespan is about 18 years, but some might live up to 30 years. And the oldest known bear in captivity actually lived to age 44. But they probably live that long because they're an alpha predator and they really don't have any predators other than humans. And so again, that's pretty long lifespan as far as wildlife goes. So again, black bears are big and they're fast. They can run up to 30 miles per hour, and you can't outrun them. They're also good swimmers and climbers, so you can't get away from them by swimming or climbing a tree. But again, black bear attacks are rare. There have been only 63 deaths due to black bear attacks in the US and Canada in the past 110 years. Actually, the last death here in New Hampshire from a black bear attack was 1784. More people are killed by bees or by spiders or by dogs or by lightning. More people are even killed by vending machine accidents. So if you do encounter a black bear in your backyard, New Hampshire Fish and Game recommends that from a comfortable distance, make loud noises by shouting, banging pots and pans, or using an air horn to deter the bear from the area. And once the bear is left, make sure that you remove anything that might have been attracting that bear to your property, such as garbage or birdseed or pet food. Ask your neighbors to also remove things that might have been attracting the bears. If you encounter a black bear at close distance or in a confined area, New Hampshire Fish and Game recommends repeating, hey bear, in a calm voice. Maintain eye contact and back away slowly. Don't turn and run or try to climb a tree because, again, as we mentioned, they're faster than you are and they can climb better than you can. Also, if they see you running, they may consider you as potential prey. So slowly back away. Give the bear a clear escape route. Don't make sure that you're not putting it in a corner. How do you know if you're too close to a bear? Suppose you're out walking and you encounter a bear or any other animal for that matter of fact. Well, here's a good rule of thumb from the Eco Explorer website. It's the rule of thumb. Essentially, what you do is hold your arm out and put your thumb between you and the animal. And if you can't fully block out that animal, you're too close. Good rule of thumb. So when a black bear wants to intimidate you, or basically to keep you at a safe distance or otherwise modifying your behavior, it will square off its lips, kind of drawing them forward so that they look square and the face looks longer. And then we'll perform any one of the following behaviors, either chomping its teeth or lips, snorting or woofing, kind of blowing air through the nose or the mouth, huffing, which is inhaling and exhaling very rapidly, swatting, or what we call false charging. And again, these are from Ben Killam. Ben Killam is from the Killam Bear Center in Lyme. Once again, he's not only New Hampshire's expert on black bears, he's probably the world's foremost authority on black bear behavior. We'll talk about him later on. So again, black bears may false charge or bluff charge. And essentially, they're telling you back off. So stand your ground, back away slowly, maintaining eye contact. Don't run. Again, the bears can outrun, outswim, and outclimb you. So if a bear approaches, hold your ground, look as big as you can. So stand up, raise your arms, look like you're bigger than he is. Wave your arms and yell, hey bear, until he leaves. And if you're with a group, always stay with your group. And if it keeps approaching, use bear spray if you have it, but you got to know how to use bear spray. So if a black bear makes contact with you, don't play dead. Again, the advice about playing dead during a bear attack applies to grizzly bears or brown bears, not black bears. For black bears, you should fight back aggressively. And unfortunately, most of the time, they're just false charging you and actually not attacking you. So the bear family, the females produce litters every other year. They average 2 to 3 cubs every 2 years. The females become fertile at between age 3 and 5. The cubs spend the next winter in the den with mom. So again, they're going to stay there for about 18 months till they become what we call yearlings. And you won't see a male with the cubs. It's only mom that's out with the cubs. And both male and female black bears tend to be solitary when there are no cubs. A male bear can have a territory of about 120 square miles. The female usually only has a territorial range of about 10 square miles. Bears are especially active at dusk and dawn, so they're what we call crepuscular. And mom often sends the cubs up a tree while she's looking for food. Then she returns to the cubs. So bears do have a social structure. Once again, Ben Killam, where they have lots of bears at the Killam Bear Center, Squirty is the matriarch of the bear family there. And she will allow her daughters to share her home range as long as they obey her rules. And she'll mete out discipline that's commensurate with whatever breach of her rules they have. So, how do bears vocalize? Well, black bears are actually pretty quiet. The classical roaring bear that you'll see in the movies or on TV is a grizzly bear, not a black bear. A forceful expression of air and deeper throaty sounds is the closest that a black bear might get to a roar. And this type of sound is often accompanied by threatening body postures, but it's usually harmless bluster. So let's see if we can hear that. Okay, I hope you can hear that. And when they're threatened by someone or another bear, they might make kind of a pulsating, throaty sound. And when they're scared or subordinate, they may make a moaning sound. Okay, and nursing cubs often make a contented sound, almost sounds like purring or a motor-like whirring. That's the nursing cubs sound. And a cub's distress sound sounds more like a human wail or a screech. And a mother bear often makes grunting sounds to get her cubs to climb up a tree or do something else. This is probably the sound that you're most likely to hear from the bears. Okay, so what do bears eat? Well, bears are omnivores. They'll eat almost anything, even roadkill. About 90% of their diet is insects and vegetation. So they're more herbivore than carnivore. Their diet depends on the season. They'll eat berries and fruits when they're available. They eat a wide variety of plants, especially once they're emerging from the den in the winter. One of their earliest foods is skunk cabbage. They also tend to find more food near the wetlands early in the year. And in the fall, before the acorns are widely available, they'll eat grasses and plants, and they'll look in logs for grubs and other insects. And prior to winter, they eat lots of acorns and beechnuts, and slightly less desirable hickory nuts and walnuts if they're available. And they like apples and corn as well. They need high energy stores in order to be able to survive the long winters. So bears and acorns. Well, again, prior to winter, the bears are eating lots of acorns and beech nuts. And once again, they'll also eat hickory nuts and walnuts, but those are kind of secondary foods. Their preferences in order are beech nuts, white oak acorns, and then red oak acorns. Red oak acorns have a very high tannin content, which makes them taste bitter. So the bears prefer acorns from white oaks. So again, sometimes they will travel distances past the red oaks if they know there's a place where there are going to be some white oak acorns available. And all these provide high energy stores that they need to survive the winter. Black bears have been known to travel as much as 30 to 70 miles in order to find good sources of acorns. And both beechnuts and acorns have cyclical patterns that are very important, and we're going to talk about that a bit later. So beechnuts are also a favorite food for the bears. In fact, it's number one on the bears' list of preferences. Beechnuts have about twice as much protein and calories per edible portion compared to acorns. And in addition to a fat content of almost 40%, the beech nuts contain many minerals like iron and zinc, which are important for the bears. And in many areas, there's actually a pattern of synchrony between beech nuts and bear production. And what that means is in alternating years when the beech nuts are scarce, the young females that were near breeding age wouldn't get as fat going into the den, so they wouldn't give birth to the cubs. But as a result, in years when they're rich, but beechnut rich conditions, essentially they're going to be much more likely to have cubs that year. So again, most of the cubs are born in the winter following a good beechnut year. Very interesting. So again, there was a recent article in Vermont Digger that talked about the cyclical pattern of beechnuts playing a role in the human bear encounters in Vermont. And they pointed out that in the mountains, beechnuts are the bear's primary fall food source. But in the valleys, the acorns are both more abundant and more consistent sources of food for the bears. So in down years for the beechnuts, the bears actually come down from the mountains into the valleys. One of our biggest concerns is that now that beech leaf disease has reached both New Hampshire and Vermont, if enough beech trees die off, bears in the future are going to be deprived of one of the most important food sources that they have. So the other thing that bears eat, while they love hard mass like acorns and beechnuts, they also love soft mass like berries and fruit. So on the top, we're going to watch a video of a mom pulling down the branches of a pear tree so her cubs can eat the pears. And then on the bottom, we're going to see a video of black bear eating blackberries. So there's mom climbing up the tree. She grabs a branch, brings it down. And again, that's a pear tree. So there's going to be plenty of pears for both mom and the cubs. So the cubs are coming back to get the fruit. Okay, and on the bottom, we're seeing a bear cub. That's a yearling. He's actually pretty big. And he's going to be eating blackberries. Lots of blackberries there. Okay, bears love insects too. As I mentioned before, they use those claws that they have to dig into snags and stumps and logs, looking for insects like ants, wasps, or bees. And they'll also turn over rocks and even cow patties, looking for insects, earthworms, and other invertebrates. This picture is a mama bear going after a wasp nest that's in this tree. And the little bear is watching. The little bear is going to take off in a minute. It's the most immature insects, the larvae, the eggs, and the pupae that are most attractive. And the reason for that is that they're very high in protein and fat. So again, here's a video. These bears found that wasp nest in the rotting tree. And they're going to dig at it, even though they're going to get stung. And once again, they're looking for the eggs and the larvae. Now look at that mama bear dig in there. She's getting stung by the bees. That's why she's shaking her head. But she's persevering. She's going to get all those insects from that nest. Okay, so if you don't see a bear, how do we know there are bears around? Well, the answer is by the signs they leave. We can see their bear prints or tracks, scat, tree markings, foraged logs, bedding areas, overturned trash cans, and broken bird feeders. So lots of signs that the bears have been around. This is showing bear prints. Once again, the hind foot, well, both feet, you actually see 5 toes with very prominent claw marks. And again, the front paw, you see a palm pad that's very, very striking. The heel pad, not so much. but on the back foot, you see both a palm pad and a heel pad. Here it is in the kind of mud. Here it is in the snow. Once again, here's a hind foot. Here's a front foot. And again, in the snow, once again, you're seeing a hind foot up here. Again, you're seeing four. Here's the fifth toe over here. Again, very prominent claws here. And again, this is a hind foot because you can see both the heel pad and the palm pad, whereas down here, it's primarily the palm pad, maybe a little bit of a hint of a heel pad back here. Well, bear scat obviously depends on what they're eating. It's often kind of green and tubular in the spring when they're eating mainly grasses and insects. But then as the berries and fruits are available, it becomes much softer and you're much more likely to see this kind of a mushy type pattern that's out there. And you can actually see the seeds in there from the berries that they're eating. And then in fall, again, when they're eating grasses before the acorns and so on are out, the scat becomes much firmer again. Okay, you may see bear signs on trees. This is showing bear paw. You can really make it almost looks like a footprint here, doesn't it? You see the five toes, and again, these are prominent claw marks here, and you can almost see a palm pad and a heel pad there. So that almost looks more like a rear paw, but we know in all likelihood that's a front paw on that tree. We often see on birch trees or aspen trees, which usually have these horizontal markings. If you're now seeing some vertical markings, that really tells you that the bear was there. Here's another thing that a bear left. Here's one where they really got in there. They're probably digging for some insects there. There were probably some woodpecker holes that told them there were lots of insects there. So why do bears mark trees? Well, actually, bears of either sex or any age will mark their scent on trees or on utility poles or signposts. But the majority of the marking is actually done by mature males, and it's done during the mating season, basically looking to attract a mate. So they rub their shoulders, their neck, and their crown, and then they often turn around and claw and bite the tree. We'll see a video of that in a minute. And sometimes I mentioned they will enlarge a woodpecker hole with their claws in order to get at the insects and the eggs that are inside. And there is another interesting theory that the beech trees tend to have a thick tar that sticks to their fur and skin for the longest period of time. And it's water resistant and it could be an effective tick repellent. So some people have postulated that they rub on the trees in order to reduce their likelihood of getting infested with ticks. Interesting. And sometimes they just like to scratch their backs. So again, we're going to watch this video. First, the bear scratches his back, then it turns and claws the tree and bites the bark. And again, bears are particularly fond of red pines for scratching. There's actually a ranger in Vermont who says that if you're out in the woods and you see a red pine that is isolated, it almost always has evidence of bear marking on it. Interesting. So again, here's that bear out tracking. Here he comes. He's going to grab this little beech tree and kind of shake at it. But what he's really doing, he's rubbing his back on that bigger tree in the background. Now he's going to turn, he scratches and actually bites the bark of the tree. So very characteristic. So here's another tree sign of bear activity. Remember that video I showed you of the mama bear that was foraging at that wasp nest in the tree? Well, this is what was left. Again, there's a hole the size of the wasp nest there and a pile of debris at the bottom. Okay, but you don't actually see the wasp nest because the mother bear actually ate the wasp nest. Here's another sign of bear activity. They love to forage insects in rotting logs. So they use those very powerful, sharp claws to rip open large sections of the log. and they can break off very large pieces and fling them aside. So here's another one we recently saw out at um, Colette's Trail, the Bicknell Brook Trail in Enfield. This is actually one of our favorite hiking trails, and we encountered it. So look what the bear did. They really did a job opening this up, looking for insects, throwing off these large pieces. You may also encounter bear bedding areas. So again, here's an area where a bear bedded down. Now, once again, it's almost impossible to say for sure that this was a bear bed as opposed to a deer bed or even a moose bed. This one happened to be a bear bed, but you may encounter them. And of course, you may encounter bears at the bird feeders or in the trash cans, or you may see an overturned composter. Bears love trash. So here's a video. There's a bear coming out. It's pretty clever. He's going to know how to open that trash can. Okay. Looks inside. Yeah, there's not very much there. I think I'll go on someplace else. Bears also love dumps. Again, I can remember as a teenager, we used to drive out to a dump at dusk looking for the bears. And bears have a great sense of smell. Here, he's got a smelly old shoe that he found in a tent. Again, they have a great sense of smell. It's said that their sense of smell is 7 times greater than that of a bloodhound and 2,100 times better than we humans can smell. So again, they can probably smell food from 1 to 2 miles away. As I mentioned, some people say they can detect smells as far away as 20 miles. I really don't believe that number. I think 1 to 2 miles is probably their limit. And they can even smell birdseed that's stored in your garage. More on that later. Upper Valley's Ben Killam, who we mentioned, is actually probably the world's most foremost expert on bear activity, discovered a receptor that's now called the Killam organ, named after him, on the roof of a black bear's mouth. And that organ helps a bear identify aromatic molecules and decide whether a plant is edible or not. So it enables a mother to teach her young which plants are suitable for eating. Okay, she'll chew on the edible vegetation, and her cubs then smell her breath to identify which plants are actually good to eat. So this is an amazing phenomenon. And once again, thanks to Ben Killam for discovering that special receptor. So again, here's showing the scent receptors. We'll go back to that. And shows this is millions of scent receptors. Here's humans way down here. Here's a dog. Here is a grizzly bear. Here's a black bear way up here. So again, very striking ability, striking sense of smell. And if they can smell it, they can get it. So again, they broke into this garage. Okay, there was something obviously in the garage that they could smell, and they actually broke right into that. So if you have things like seed and open packages in your garage, the bears can smell it and they'll find ways to get in there at it. We last year had a cub that was stuck in a garage window here at Eastman, trying to get at some food in the garage or something that smelled in the garage. And again, here's a video of a bear climbing into a garage window. Now this is from Lake Tahoe rather than Eastman, but it just shows how remarkable the bear's ability to get into garages is. So look at that. This is a little tiny window. Look at him climb up there, squeeze in, and he got completely in there. Unbelievable. The bears will even eat your lunch. Here's a video that was on WMAR that showed a bear eating a worker's lunch in the front seat of the company car. We had a similar incident here at Eastman. One of our residents opened up the hatch of his car and began taking some groceries into his house. And when he came back to the car, there was a bear sitting in the driver's seat eating a chocolate bar. So incredible. So what attracts bears? bears? Well, obviously bird feeders, trash cans and dumpsters, chickens and poultry, beehives, fruit crops, almost any kind of food. Bird feeders and bears. The bears love bird feeders. And the seeds that you put in your bird feeders, like sunflower seeds, are high in fat, protein, and calories. And that's just what the bear needs. So bears will return over and over to sites where they've gotten food in the past. And they can even smell bird food in your garage, and they'll try to enter your garage through the windows or actually breaking down the door, like we saw in that one photo. And the recommendation in New Hampshire traditionally has been to take your bird feeders down from April 1st to December 1st. And again, if you live south of the White Mountains, take them down by March 15th or sooner if spring conditions have arrived earlier. This recommendation is probably going to change because of climate change. Because our winters are shorter, the bears are coming out of their dens earlier and going into their dens later than usual. So that period is probably going to be extended. We've already been asked, when can we put our bird feeders out? But the bottom line is it's going to be at least December 1st before you can put them out. But keep your eyes open. Eastman's administration will send out an announcement telling you when you can put your bird feeders out this year. It'll depend on whether we have a good snow cover or whether there's been ongoing bear activity. So again, don't put your bird feeders out until you've heard that announcement made. Okay, some people have been putting their bird feeders out just during the daytime and at a height that is above the bear's reach. Don't do that. The bears will visit bird feeders during the day, and they'll be also attracted to any bird feed that gets spilled out under those elevated feeders. So again, here's Mama Bear teaching her cubs to raid the bird feeder. So once again, they learn right away what are good places to go to get food. So the bears really don't have any natural predators other than one, and that's us. Okay, the bears are alpha animals here in the Northeast, and meaning they don't have natural predators. But most of them die here from either motor vehicle accidents or hunting or from some of those bad bear behaviors that they learned from eating food next to humans. Some will also die of starvation if food sources are scant. But fortunately, in the last several years, we've had pretty good food sources in the woods, and we haven't seen any bears that look like they're starving. Rarely, coyotes or bobcats might prey on very young cubs, so the cubs often spend their nights up in trees where those predators can't climb. How about winter? Well, bears get ready for winter by eating as much food as possible. In the fall months, the bears eat and drink almost nonstop. And that process is called hyperphagia. And they're trying to put on as much weight as they can to survive the long winter without eating. Bears do den up in winter, and they'll den in hollow trees or logs, under the root ball of a tree, in rock crevices, or in caves. And again, bears are not true hibernators. Rather, they go through what's called torpor, and they conserve energy. And hibernation for the bears really means that they just don't need to eat or drink, and they rarely urinate or defecate. But during their slumber, they will drop their body temperature, their heart rate, their respiratory rate, and their bodies use up the fat that they stored during the fall and summer. And they'll lose about 25% of their weight over the winter. But the main difference between true hibernation and torpor is that during torpor, the animal is able to wake up quickly in order to avoid danger, or if the opportunity exists to get some food, they'll actually go outside the den and food. So you actually might see some bears in winter. And they tend to stay in the den when there's no food available. So again, I mentioned the bears fatten up in the fall. This was the bear who won Fat Bear Week in 2025. That bear was a grizzly bear out west. We don't have any grizzlies. Here in New Hampshire in 2022, we mentioned before, the food sources were far less than usual because both acorns and beechnuts were not readily available. So the bears weren't putting on much weight, and we were actually worried that some of them were not going to be able to bulk up. But in subsequent years, what we call mast years, where there was excessive amounts of acorns and beechnuts, the bears have had lots of foods in the forest and have had no problem bulking up for the winter. So this year we're seeing lots of acorns out in the forest. So we expect that our black bears are going to be able to put on the weight that they need for the upcoming winter. Uh, so again, hibernation, even though it's not true hibernation, is triggered by decreasing day length and some hormonal changes that take place. And they basically tell the bear they need to conserve energy. Here in New Hampshire, the bears typically enter dens between mid-October and late November, and they'll come out of their dens usually in late March or early April. And the pregnant bears will give birth to their cubs in the den, most likely during the first 2 months of their so-called hibernation. And the family will remain in the den for the duration of winter while mom sleeps and the cubs nurse and grow. Even while she's asleep, they're actually nursing and growing. And they'll emerge in the spring when the snow begins to melt. They'll start searching for food, often in the wetlands, which tend to have some of the earliest food sources. So here's a black bear den here in New Hampshire. Here's another black bear den in a tree. You got mama bear and the cubs that are denning in this hollow tree. Still winter, you can see some snow there. And they're not true hibernators, so they can get aroused and come out in winter. And this is a video courtesy of Mark Kendall. So once again, there you see the bears in the hollow of a tree. You're seeing two, and actually probably a third cub there. And obviously mama bear's up here, up top. So they're having a good all time there. So how about climate change in bears? Well, you all know that our winters here in New England are getting warmer and shorter. And they start later and end earlier. We have significantly more snow cover free days in recent years. And because of that, the bears are more out and about. So you might encounter a bear even in the winter. But if they're out before their natural food sources are out, they'll be looking for your bird feeders. So that's one of the reasons you have to pay attention to what's going on in the wild and locally here at Eastman with regard to the time you could put your bird feeders out. And here's a video of the bears emerging from the den while there's still snow on the ground. That one you actually have to go to Facebook, so you can click on that link to see that video. So again, bears are emerging earlier. The shorter winter means they're coming out earlier. Here in 2025, this year, the bears were out since late February. This one, courtesy of Bob Morrison, showed a bear that was out while there's still some snow in the ground. And the snow cover may hide some of their food sources, and the vegetation is not yet out. One of the earliest plants that they see is skunk cabbage, which often flowers above the level of the snow. So that's an early favorite for the bears. But their best early favorite are your bird feeders. So again, keep your eyes out. Don't feed the bears. First of all, it's illegal to feed the bears in New Hampshire, either knowingly or unknowingly. And New Hampshire Fish and Game officers are the ones that enforce this law. You might get a warning the first time, but you're at risk for fines of hundreds of dollars if they catch you feeding the bears more than once. And worse yet, the bears are likely to return to your property over and over. Once again, they have great memories, and if they got food at your house one time, they're going to come back multiple times. And remember, a fed bear is a dead bear. And that's because when they learn these bad habits, they don't learn how to forage appropriately out in the woods, and eventually they're going to run into trouble. So again, the fed bears develop these unbear-like behaviors, and they may end up dying because of that. So again, remember that earlier video I showed you of the mama bear and the three cubs here at Eastman a year ago? Well, she was teaching them bad habits. They're going to remember where they could find food near humans rather than foraging out in the forest. And when they get turned loose by mama at about 18 months, they have difficulty adapting to life in the wild. Now, hopefully, since we haven't seen a lot of the bears since September, hopefully they're forgetting some of those learned behaviors, mainly because they got plenty of food out in the woods. So again, that mama bear was likely around during that food shortage in 2022, and she probably learned those bad behaviors herself back then. But remember, a fed bear is a dead bear. Bears are becoming more urbanized, and that means they're adapting their behaviors to get food from populated areas rather than the forest. And in places where they've actually studied the bears, urban bears tend to weigh more and have more cubs than bears that are out in the forest. But often their young don't survive, and that ultimately may result in some declines in population. So, what should you be doing? Well, first of all, never feed the bears. Put your bird feeders away from April 1st to December 1st, longer if there's no snow or if the bears are still known to be active. Don't store open bird food in your garage or in a house or a shed because, again, the bears can smell it and they'll try to get into your garage. Keep your garbage tight in tightly closed containers inside or secure in a secure storage area. And any trash you put outside should be in a bear resistant container. Only put out trash on the morning you expect it's going to be picked up rather than the night before. And use anchored bear resistant composters. Remember, I showed you that one photo of a composter the bear is actually appended. Don't put meat, fish, or any sweet food scraps, including fruit, in your outdoor composter. And don't leave pet food or pet dishes outside at night. And make sure that you clean and store your outdoor grills after you use them. So again, double bagging your trash can reduce some of the odors that might attract the bears. You could use ammonia to repulse the bears, but don't put it in a balloon or any other container that might splash into the bear's eyes. Uh, Bear-resistant trash containers are very effective. Researchers did a project out in Durango, Colorado, where they gave away for free 1,000 bear-resistant trash cans. And the houses that used those bear-resistant trash cans had a 60% drop in problem bear encounters. So again, this is a poster that says you're in bear country. Again, garbage kills bears, never feed the bears, store food properly, separate cooking and eating areas from sleeping areas. That's if you're out camping in the in the woods. Make sure that you put your pet on a leash and control when you're out hiking, and respect the bear's space. Always give them lots of room. And if you do encounter a bear, keep standing, maintain non-threatening eye contact, back away slowly, speaking in a soft, kind of confident voice. Don't run or climb trees. And again, the bear will usually back off. So if you're out hiking, usually you want to hike with two or more people. But keep your dog on a leash because an uncontrolled dog can spook a bear. And actually, the bear may come toward you. Usually, normal conversation is enough to keep the bears away. But if you see a bear, keep your distance. Make sure it's aware of your presence by either talking loudly, clapping, or making other noise. Air horns are useful at scaring bears away. Some used to advocate using bear bells, but it turns out that some of the younger bears are actually curious and are attracted by those bells. Similarly, whistles are probably not effective. Beware of your surroundings. Make sure that you don't inadvertently get between a mother bear and her cubs. The mother will interpret that her cubs are in danger and she'll try to protect them. Black bears also commonly false charge or bluff charge. So they'll come toward you and it's basically a bluff. They're going to stop and back off. But if you do see that, stand your ground, back away slowly. So if you're hiking or outdoors, you want to be aware of your surroundings. So you should constantly scan your surroundings visually. Don't wear headphones, okay? Because again, you won't be able to hear the sound of a bear that's nearby. And avoid strong fragrances because those might attract the bears. Uh, Keep any food in sealed containers. And remember, I showed you this rule of thumb. So again, if you're out there and you see an animal, whether it's a bear or another animal, put your thumb out between your eyes and the animal. And if your thumb can't fully cover that animal, you're too close. So back away. Well, how about bear spray? Bear spray is highly effective at deterring bears at a close range. And we don't know of any recommendations to carry bear spray here in our area. But if you do carry it, make sure that you know how to use it and actually practice using it. If you were out in west or in grizzly country, you definitely need to carry bear spray. But you need to understand the use and limitations of bear spray and carry it where it's easy to access it. So here's a link to a video on bear spray. We're not going to show this, but you can click on that link and watch that video. So if you're camping, maintain a clean campsite. Put any food scraps or fat drippings in closed containers, not in the campfire. Don't cook or eat in your tent. Keep things, don't keep anything that has an odor to it in your tent. And that includes toiletries and even toothpaste. Keep your food and your cooking gear separate from your sleep area. And keep food in a closed vehicle or structure, or hang the food at least 10 to 15 feet off the ground and 5 feet out on a limb that wouldn't support the weight of the bear. Bear bags and waterproof bags that can hold food or garbage still need to be hung high. I'm not sure how effective those really are. And routinely take your garbage to the park's waste depot. So, what else should you be doing? Well, educate your children that bears are wild animals and they need to stay away from them. Children outdoors should be with adults or in larger groups. And if they see a bear on or around school property, they should go inside the school right away. And if they see a bear, they should not approach the bear. They should slowly back away toward the school or their house while watching the bear. And they should not turn and run. And once they're safely away, they should tell an adult what they saw. So for schools and school teachers, well, they should make sure that lunches, lunch bags, wrappers, and snacks are kept inside and not outside. They should scan outside for any of those above items. They should educate the children using a number of tools that are tailored for youngsters. And here they are. There's a Bearwise activity book, a Black Bear Ecology, which comes in flavors for grade 2, for grade 4, and grade 7. And we have to end any talk about bears about talking about Upper Valley's most famous bear, Mink the bear. Mink was named after Mink Brook in Hanover, New Hampshire. And everybody loved Mink, and she interacted very well with humans. But she probably became too enamored with humans, and some people started getting scared. So back in 2018, the state wildlife officials decided she had to go, and they actually planned to shoot her. They were going to euthanize her. But the local news outlets picked up the story, and a petition was circulated to save Mink. And there were thousands of signatures, and Governor Chris Sununu pardoned Mink. So again, the officials relocated her far north, up near the Canadian border. But within a year, she actually found her way back to Hanover. She looped back and forth about 1,000 miles altogether. But sadly, in 2020, she died. And at first, it was thought she had been hit by a car. But when they did an autopsy, they concluded she died of natural causes. And she was probably actually 30 years old at the time. Her legacy obviously lives on because there were generation after generation of cubs that are still here from Mink. So Mink's looping journey took her about a year to get back to Hanover, covered about 1,000 miles. She crossed Interstate 91 and the Connecticut River multiple times. She was traveling about 30 miles per day. And she was able to find her way back to her home range due to her knowledge of the area and instinct, which is very common in bears. And like other animals, bears use a range of cues for long distance navigation. This includes their very keen sense of smell, using visual landmarks, and potentially sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic field. The latter has not yet been proven, but there's a good possibility that they also have a magnetic geocompass that they use. And her internal map was powerful enough to get her all the way back to her familiar territory near Dartmouth College. So up top here is you're seeing mink was actually tracked. She had a tracking collar on, so they were able to track this. So back in 2018, they relocated her way up here, way up in northern part of New Hampshire, right near the Canadian border. And again, she goes zigging, zagging back all this way, crisscrossing the Connecticut River and I-91 multiple times, and was traveling about 30 miles a day. And she eventually got back down here to Hanover. And at the bottom is a video of deer mink. Here she's getting kind of old. She's moving very slowly, but everybody loved her. So here she is. She's paying a visit to somebody up in the Hanover area. That's mink. So again, I highly recommend that you read Ben Killam's book, In the Company of Bears. As I mentioned, Ben Killam is not only the Upper Valley's authority on black bears, he's actually one of the foremost authorities in the entire world on black bear behavior. So suggested readings, again, in addition to Ben's book, you can go to this website, Something's Brewing in New Hampshire. Another website, New Hampshire wildlife website, Black Bear. The Bearwise program, which has a lot of good recommendations. And again, for school teachers, using some of those resources that I talked about before. So that's a little bit about black bears. Hopefully you've gotten something out of that and you can enjoy the black bears.